Hello, and welcome to another episode of Lady Gwyn and Friends, as the bi-monthly live stream series where I, Lady Gwyn, am joined by friends from the fandom to discuss their favorite chapter. This series is brought to you by the Radio Westeros patrons who support our work with regular episodes of the podcast as well as bonus content, which is exactly what this is. And thank you to our patrons for being here, for doing that for us, and for all of you for being here. If you're interested in joining the Radio Westeros patron, visit patreon.com/Radio Westeros for more information about that. Now, thank you to anyone also who is consuming this in the future. The audio episode will be available within a couple of days. So we really appreciate whether you're watching live, watching in the future, listening in the future. Thank you for spending time with us. And now it is time to welcome our guest for today. It's Sanri.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
How are you?
Sanrixian, last on the Radio Westeros airwaves back in House of the Dragons, season 2 wrap up last year, which was pretty fitting, wouldn't you say?
That was definitely very fitting for me.
Yes.
Anything with dragons, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, very happy to have you back today. And speaking of dragons, I like to have our guest introduce the chapter that we're going to talk about today, and it is
Daenerys 10, A Game of Thrones, which is my favorite chapter. It's been my favorite chapter for a really long time. When you asked me to be a part of this and you were like, we're just picking our favorite chapters, I knew immediately which one I wanted to do. It's just always been like a really special place in my heart because it's the birth of the dragons. And being the nerd and the dragon girl, you all know me as, like, you're like, oh, obviously, yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yes.
Makes perfect sense.
Incredibly on brand. So yes, it was not
it's the dragon lady.
Pretty much had to be for the dragon lady. So yeah, this is great. We got a lot to dig into today. We're both so excited. We couldn't stop talking about it before we started the stream. So it's just a lot going on here. Quick reminder for any new listeners, we are definitely spoilers all books.
Spoilers all books.
There we go.
That does include sample chapters. I don't think that will come up today, but just in case it does, you never know how far this conversation will range. Watch out for spoilers. And in general, for book-related content, we consider only the books and the words of the author as canon. We cover the show, but we try hard not to mix the two because, as you all know, they do diverge quite a bit at critical points. So not so much here. But anyways, just that's a standard warning. So let's get started. We usually start with how the chapter sits in relationship to the main narrative. So we're going to do this, then we'll do a short summary, and then we'll get down to the nitty gritty of all of the juicy things we want to talk about. But when I talk about the chapter, how it sits in relation to the main narrative, a lot of different, depending on the viewpoint character, the chapters can be very far removed from the rest of the narrative, like depending where they're placed. It's either time or space. They could be very, very different. So Daenerys, of course, being in a very different space than most of the other viewpoints, tends to be kind of hard to pin down. There's one specific thing in this chapter which actually makes it easy to line her up with everybody else. So we'll see what that is. Dany 10 is the last chapter of A Game of Thrones. It's an iconic ending for a book that had an equally iconic beginning, which some of you might recall we covered in the first installment of this series with Mr. Joe Magician. So this chapter comes immediately after Cat 11, which is the King in the North chapter. So, George ends, which, as you should do, he ends the book with a couple of real bangers there. Within Dany's arc, this sits after Dany 9, which is when she's recovering from the stillbirth of Rhaego. she learns about Drogo's fate following Mirri Maz Duur's blood magic ritual, and ultimately smothers a comatose Khal Drogo with a pillow. And her next chapter after this is Dany 1 of A Clash of Kings, in which she's going to lead her tiny Khalasar into the Red Waste following a comet in the sky. And that comet is the thing I was talking about. It's pretty useful syncing Dany's chapters to the timeline. It's like a little pin in the timeline. It's first mentioned in Bran's 7th chapter of Game of Thrones, which is 6 chapters prior to Dany 10, which he learns about Ned's death. Also, around this time, the Walders are making their way north to Winterfell from the twins, and Cat and Robb, who is the newly proclaimed king of the North, are at Riverrun with Jaime Lannister as their captive. Theon's still with Robb for now, and also in the Riverlands, you've got Tyrion, who's making his journey south from the Inn at the Crossroads to take up his post as acting hand of the king, while Tywin's dogs, Gregor Clegane, Amory Lorch, and Vargo Hoat, have been unleashed upon the heartland of Westeros, with orders to set it afire from the God's Eye to the Red Fork. You've got the Brotherhood without banners in that same geographical area, becoming a major force of resistance, and Arya is also in that area, moving towards her fate in the Riverlands. She's still with Yoren of the Night's Watch in a group that includes Gendry and good old Jack and Hagar. They see the comet from the King's Road. Back at the Wall, Jon has tried to run away to join his brother after hearing about Ned's death, but he's prevented from doing that by his friends, which includes Sam Tarly. Further south, you get Cersei and Joffrey, quote, this is Tywin lurching from one folly to the next, advised by what he calls a council of jackanapes. So King's Landing is full of jackanapes and folly. Also Sansa, who is their captive, enduring Joffrey's abuse. And at Dragonstone, you've got Stannis being advised by Melisandre of Ashai, and ultimately allowing the murder of his advisor and childhood tutor, Maester Cresson, who's also witnessed seeing the comet in the sky. So another pin there, and Davos Seaworth, of course, is there. In the meantime, down in the Reach, Renly Baratheon marries Marjorie Tyrell and begins to assemble a massive army to challenge Joffrey's and Stannis' claims to the Iron Throne. And his army, of course, includes Brienne the Tall. We don't know a lot about what's happening in Dorne at this point, but one thing we can tell in hindsight is that it was around this time that a young person called Alleris arrived in Old Town to begin studying at the Citadel. And speaking of things happening in the background, it was also around this time that Barristan Selmy arrived in Pentos, where he was recruited by Illyrio and prepares to voyage to Karth, where the plan is he's going to pick up Dany and bring her west for the next step in the cheesemonger's ever-evolving plot against the Iron Throne. I think that pretty much covers all of the main characters, what they're up to, while Dany is here in this location. And all that said, let's move on to our summary of the chapter. And why don't you take it away, Samri?
Sure. We open this chapter with Dany and her calls building a pyre for Drogo. Sorry, her cow. And Mirri Maz Duur is nearby when they kill a stallion to place on the pyre. It's noted that they kill like a red that wasn't worthy of Drogo's red, but was still a red that was good enough, I guess. And she thinks Dany is attempting another blood magic ritual. She tells her scornfully it will not be enough, and that she needs knowledge and the proper words to do what Mirri thinks she is doing. She offers to help in exchange for her freedom, but Dany and her cause silence the woman.
Yes. Onto this pyre that they're building go all of Drogo's treasures, with the exception of Dany's bride gifts, because she has plans for those. Then Jorah approaches and calls her princess, which leads Dany to correct him and say, my brother Viserys was your king, was he not? Viserys is dead. I am his heir, the last blood of House Targaryen. Whatever his is mine now.
So then Jorah corrects himself and calls her for the first time my queen, and then he reveals that he thinks she intends to immolate herself on Drogo's pyre, begging her not to do it and offering to take her away to safety. I believe we have a quote here, right?
Yep. If you wish to, yes.
Would you like to read that? I like your quote reading voice.
Okay, I will read it. I need to have my, come on. My sword that was his is yours, Daenerys, and my heart is well that never belonged to your brother. I am only a knight, and I have nothing to offer you but exile. But I beg you, hear me. Let Khal Drogo go. You shall not be alone, I promise you. No man shall take you to Vaes Dothrak unless you wish to go. You need not join the Dosh Khaleen. Come east with me. Yeti, Karth, the Jade Sea, Ashai by the Shadow. We'll see all the wonders yet unseen, and drink what wines the gods see fit to serve us. Please, Khaleesi, I know what you intend. Do not.
So then Dany tells him he doesn't understand, and he tries to express that he does, ending with, "Do not ask me to stand aside as you climb on Drogo's pyre. I will not watch you burn." She repeats that he's wrong and ends up swearing that she doesn't intend to burn on the pyre. Then she addresses the small group of Dothraki that remain with her, fewer than 100 women, children, and the elderly, along with her cause. She tells them that they are all free people now, and they can stay or leave as they choose. She next addresses her cause directly, offering each in turn one of her bride gifts: the silver-handed whip to Jogo, the dragonbone bow to Aggo, and finally the gold-chased Arak to Rakaro. She names them Ko and asks them each to swear their lives to hers. Because this has never been done with a woman in their culture, all three refuse with embarrassment, though Rakaro says he will see her safely to the Dosh Khaleen, as is tradition.
I actually love that part.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll take you to Vaes Dothrak.
Yeah. I'll let you go be a widow.
Yeah, that's about it. But thanks for the cool gift.
Mm-hmm.
So Dany just ignores their refusals, and then she turns to Jorah and takes his oaths of service and obedience. Apparently ignores the part where he just basically offered to run away with, like, let's run away together. I don't know. That was weird.
They're going to go sell oranges.
Whatever they're going to do. She's like, no, how about you be my queen's guard? And then she promises him a Valyrian steel longsword as a future reward for his good service. And then I'll take this part. Dany goes, then she goes into the tent to prepare for the pyre and washes and dresses herself with the help of her handmaids. And she sends them away so that she can prepare Drogo's body for the pyre. She washes and dresses him and then calls back her handmaidens and her cause to bear him out to the pyre. So far, other than this weird, I free you to the Dothraki, just as an aside, this is all totally normal stuff. Like, other than asking the cause to become her blood riders, it's all pretty normal. It's normal for Dothraki to burn their dead khals. It's normal for them to sacrifice a horse on the funeral pyre. It's normal for a widow to clean and prepare the dead person's body for for the pyre. It starts to diverge pretty quickly, though. Once they get out there into the pyre, she has him laid out on top of the pyre with his head pointing in the direction of Mother of Mountains, probably also normal. Then she calls for oil, which she pours onto the 3 layers of wood, brush, and grass, which have been layered in with dead horse, treasures, and all of the rich fabrics that they're going to burn, and Drogo himself on top. And then, this is where it gets weird, she calls for her eggs. Jorah tries to persuade her because they're absolutely priceless, and he's like, are you crazy? We could sell those. We could sell those to finance our fun lifestyle as orange sellers. But Dany persists, and she places them around Drogo's corpse. The quote is, the black beside his heart, under his arm, the green beside his head, his braid coiled around it, the cream and gold down between his legs. And we'll get back to that later, because there's a lot to say about that. What's next?
So Miriam Mazdur then chooses the moment, and she steps down from arranging the eggs to speak and says, "You're mad." So Miri Mazdor comes right up to her while she's placing the eggs and says, "You're mad." And Dany replies lightly, "Is it so far from madness to wisdom?" before ordering Jorah and Ricardo to bind the Magi to the pyre. So then Dany herself pours the oil over the woman's head, telling her, "I thank you for the lessons you have taught me." And when the woman defiantly tells her, "You will not hear me scream," Dany replies almost indifferently, "I will, but it is not your screams I want, only your life. I remember what you told me. Only death can pay for life."
Yeah, so it's getting weird now.
It's getting weird now. She's into something. Yeah.
Yep. So then Dany stands back and waits for the sun to set. And she's waiting for the first star to show itself. And this apparently is also some part of the Dothraki tradition, because this is the signal to light the pyre so that Drogo can take his place amongst the stars. The idea being that he will that the ghost Drogo will mount the ghost horse and ride into the night sky and just be up there in the stars above them for the rest of time. So, funnily enough, when the first star is spotted, it's a comet. Burning red, blood red, fire red, the dragon's tail. It says she could not have asked for a stronger sign.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong sign, right? The first star being the red star. So Dany took herself the torch, and she then lit the pyre. And as it took hold, it says that Miri Mazdor began to sing in a shrill, ululating voice, and the pyre became an inferno. Drogo began to burn, and Miri's song became a wail. Dany fights the temptation to do what Jorah had feared, throw herself onto the pyre so that she can spend eternity with her sun and stars. The Dothraki and Jorah back away as the heat and smoke become overwhelming, but Dany stands her ground, thinking she was blood of the dragon, and the fire was in her. She had sensed the truth of it long ago. She watches the dancing flames, recalling the wild dancers at her wedding. There's also language earlier in this chapter when she's having her bath, and they describe the water as being like scalding. And it's very reminiscent of the first episode of the show where it's like, fire cannot burn a dragon, right? So then Miri's screams fall silent, and Dany begins to step towards the pyre. As Jorah screams behind her, she walks towards the flames, seeing only their beauty. And then, I love this line, a great gray stallion lined in smoke, its mane a flowing nimbus of blue flame. And this is the moment for Drogo's spirit to mount his fiery steed and ride into the heavens, as you mentioned previously here, to take his place in the Nightlands with his ancestors. She sees it happen, and then as Drogo cracks a fiery whip and smiles at her from astride a stallion, she hears a crack, followed by a chunk of rock rolling from the pyre to land at her feet. It was curved, pale, and veined with gold, so Viserion's egg, broken and smoking, and was followed by a second crack, loud and sharp as thunder. Ignoring the chaos and screaming behind her, with a final thought for Jorah, no, she wanted to shout for him, no, my good knight, do not fear for me. The fire is mine. I am Daenerys Stormborn, daughter of dragons, bride of dragons, mother of dragons. Don't you see? Don't you see? And she stepped into the flames, calling to her children.
Okay, we're starting to see. We are starting to see.
Yep.
And then it says the third crack was as loud as the breaking of the world. And then something really interesting happens, because in the final 5 paragraphs of this chapter, George does something that is extremely rare for A Song of Ice and Fire. You can probably count on one hand the number of times that this happens. The narrative switches to an omniscient point of view for 2 paragraphs, in which we get Jorah's and the others' viewpoints to the aftermath of Dany walking into the pyre. Then it comes back to Dany for 2 paragraphs as Jorah and the Dothraki all fall to their knees before her and swear their loyalty as she is revealed with the 3 dragons clinging on to her. It says she knew they were hers now, today and tomorrow and forever, hers as they had never been Drogo's. And then it goes back to omniscient point of view for the final iconic lines. As Daenerys Targaryen rose to her feet, her black hissed, pale smoke venting from its mouth and nostrils, the other 2 pulled away from her breasts and added their voices to the call, translucent wings unfolding and stirring the air, and for the first time in hundreds of years, the night came alive with the music of dragons. Bum, 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 and Game of Thrones. Bum, bum, bum.
Just like that is the moment, right? It's like magic back in the world. We have dragons. Like I was like locked in when I read that. I was like, here we go.
Yep.
And then that's the last chapter, and then it's just all family trees for days.
Yeah. Can you imagine having to wait for Clash of Kings, like if you were reading this when it first came out and you couldn't just pick
I would
up
have
the
died.
book? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thank goodness we have that going for us. So yeah, so that's how the book ends, and now that's how the chapter ends. So let's dig deep into some of these discussion points we have lined up for you. First, let's just talk about real quickly about the building of the pyre. I kind of alluded to this. What Jorah assumes is going to happen, I guess, is some version of what in the real world would be called sati, which is, the wife throws herself on her husband's funeral pyre and joins him in death. I'm not really sure why he was thinking that was going to happen, because, like we were saying as we were reading that, there's really nothing unusual going on. She's building a funeral pyre for Drogo, which is perfectly normal for Dothraki.
I think maybe he is kind of picking up on the state of mind she's in, because like we had briefly mentioned this before we started the stream, but like her whole attitude this whole chapter is just like almost like a trance, right? So she's just kind of like zoned in and following her instincts. So he can probably maybe pick up on her not being 100% there. She's just lost Rhaego. She's just lost her husband. She's been through it. Like she has been through it. So she's actively like maybe in survival mode, and he's like, something's wrong, you're gonna do something crazy.
Yeah, he
like
can
you're gonna what are you gonna do, girl?
Something
like
is coming.
What's up?
Yeah, exactly. Did he ask her to run away with him? I think we addressed that.
Gross.
When we were reading that was icky. So but he
oranges
did.
Let's go sell oranges.
Basically did. So that was weird. So what about, so we talked about this as we're reading the summary, the pyre, it's all pretty normal stuff until the eggs. So the placing of the eggs, symbolic? I think you think it's symbolic.
I think it's symbolic. I think it's
too,
symbolic.
But I did not have such great thoughts as you. So
okay, so I've thought about this a lot. I'm good friends with Joe Magician. You're good friends with Joe Magician. He's very influential on me. Pyres and Blood was something he came up with, which we'll talk about later when we get to the actual pyre part. But like, it's made me think a lot. I think a lot about dragons. I think a lot about their colors and symbolisms in like mythology and what that means. And this whole situation of, I just mentioned Danny, like kind of being on instinct and following on instinct. When we think about magic, like, and what we consider magic in the world that we live in, right? So in the real world, if you want to talk about witchcraft and like modern witchcraft and what people consider spells, like a big component, of course, is all the ingredients that go into it. So we can talk about the way that they constructed that pyre with the pillars going, the first layer, they go west to east or east to west, and it's mentioned like earth to something. I have it in here somewhere. But the orientation of the pillars, and then on the top layer, they orient them north to south, ice to fire, and then they have the ingredients, like they have all of his worldly possessions, except for a couple things. The ritual sacrifice of the horse, they put Khal Drogo's body on there. They end up including Mirri Maz Duur. It's like all these things that are included into this grand spell, and she's just kind of like in this trance going along with things. So what that made me think about when they place the eggs, black would be near the heart, so it's the fourth chakra. So if you want to get into like the symbolism in the body and the placement and everything, that's often associated with love, compassion, emotional balance, acting as a bridge between the lower and upper chakras. And she describes, this is really weird, but it just always, this line has really stood out to me. The line about what Khal Drogo smells like when she smells his hair. So she talks about him smelling like warm earth, smoke, grass, horses, and semen. And I was like, why is semen included in there? When I was talking to Bahad about it earlier, he said, it's salt and smoke. There you go. The Azor Ahai was the semen all along. But what it made me think about is associating these colors and these elements. So like the heart chakra, follow this. This might be crazy. I might be going into the weeds, but black, the heart chakra, warm earth and smoke. And then we have the green, which is placed by the head, which is the 7th chakra, associated with spiritual connection, higher consciousness, integration of all chakras. That's your grass, that's your horses. And then the cream is placed at the sacral chakra, aka the genitals, and that's associated with emotions, creativity, sensuality, and pleasure. So that would be the semen association. So it's kind of like all these, the language in this chapter has always made me feel like he's showing us exactly what the spell was.
Right.
To make this happen.
Yeah.
And I might be crazy. Sorry if I completely derailed the stream, but
No, you did not.
That was where my brain went when I was thinking about witchcraft.
No, because, I had thoughts. I mean, I did not have any specific thoughts. I just thought it's got to mean something. Black at the heart, green at the head, and cream and gold at the genitals. Like, why? And I think that's great. So
if you also think about like the dragons they become, Drogon, her heart, like that's her soul, and then Rhaegal, her kind of both Rhaegal and Viserys, she has slightly of a lesser bond to, but like they're still her babies. And if it follows the show and Rhaegal goes to Jon, the spiritual head connection,
right,
and Viserion being either killed or maybe going to Tyrion, like we could look into that in the sacral connection. The sensuality, if you will.
Interesting. Yeah. Is it, I don't know if this is, well, maybe we'll get back to this about the cream, the hatching of the eggs and the order, because I wondered about that too. You picked up on it when we were reading the summary. But now let's talk about Mirri Maz Duur, because she's a very important part of the funeral pyre. She's the one of the parts of the funeral pyre, her and the eggs, that we wouldn't normally expect to find on a Dothraki funerary ritual. But there she is. She gets, tied down into the pyre, and Dany's very robotic through that whole, like, she's just like, tie the Maggie into the funeral pyre. Okay. Did she bring this on herself? Meaning, if you look back a couple chapters with her ritual in Dany 8, where she was called upon to help save Drogo's life, and she warned Dany, but then she went ahead and did the ritual anyways. Rhaego, well, I'll remember that Jorah the doofus ended up bringing Dany into the tent with her pregnant belly and the baby. She ends up losing the baby because he should not have done that. But anyways, she did not save anybody's life. She just made everything worse. Was that intentional? So I asked that question because I think that question helps to answer the question of whether she brought this upon herself. Did she set out to sort of, play this big trick on Dany, or did she have good intentions in Dany 8 as far as Drogo, saving Drogo?
I've always thought she had ill intentions. I've always thought that she was like not intending to save Drogo, and I think maybe she was trying to do the ritual correctly, but there was something going on where it wasn't clear. I've never felt like her intentions were 100% pure. I guess I'll say that solidly. Like, I didn't think she necessarily wanted Rhaego to die, but I definitely don't think she wanted Drogo to live.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I can't quite tease out, and now she's dead, so we'll never know what her intentions were. But I can't see why she would have wanted to save Drogo's life. She, whatever Dany might have thought she had done for her, or whatever she thought she deserved in exchange for the great gifts that she had given Mirri, which are debatable anyways. And I think she says that to her at some point in one of those chapters. I sure can't see her feeling like she owed anything to Khal Drogo. So, maybe she didn't intend for the baby to die, but I would argue that that's Jorah's fault anyways, because she shouldn't have been in that tent.
He was a ding dong in that instance for sure.
Yeah. Like, why would you? we're not talking about Danny 8, so we don't have to. But
Yeah.
it's like, why would you? Why would you go
Yeah.
into that tent with all the lights and the weird things going on? I don't know. So back to the question, which is, did Miri Mazdor, did she bring this on herself? I guess maybe kind of, if she, you know, if she didn't have good intentions in the first place, maybe did she deserve this fate? Did she deserve to have her own words turned upon her? Only death can play for life. Um, I don't
I
know.
mean, it gave us dragons, so
Yeah.
sorry, but no, I mean, like, I
Sorry,
don't
Mary.
necessarily think she deserved to burn for what she did, but
Yeah.
she did kill, technically, let Drogo die, and Rhaego did die. So, I mean,
Hmm.
again, like, the trance that Dany seems under, the way it's all just instinctual for her, like, she's just acting on pure instinct at this point. I really feel like she is going with what is speaking to her in her mind, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Blood,
agree.
magic,
Something is driving
trauma.
her. Yeah. All of those things rolled up. I mean, yeah, she lost her family, her future, and at the center of it is this woman. Whether she asked her to do it or not probably doesn't matter to Danny because she failed. So, um, yeah. So, that's interesting. Um, that what was her? I think you have a quote there too. What
Oh
was
yeah,
her? Yeah.
there's a line like early on before she runs her mouth more and inevitably gets tied to the pyre. But she says, "By itself the blood is nothing. You do not have the words to make a spell, nor the wisdom to find them. Do you think blood magic is a game for children? You call me a magi as if this were a curse, but all it means is wise. You are a child with a child's ignorance. Whatever you mean to do, it will not work. Loose me from these bonds and I will help you." So it's like, I just think that's really funny at the end of the chapter where she's like, "You think it's a game for children," and she pulls it off. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
get him,
Yeah.
queen.
She does.
Eat.
I think what's interesting to me is when she's saying that line. This is kind of why I was stressing when we were doing the summary that everything was very normal. So, like, this
Yeah,
is normal Dothraki stuff. Building the pyre. She has the stallion killed, and that's when she says that she makes
that
that big
line.
speech. And really, from just from the facts of it, it's all normal so far. This is just what the Dothraki do. They kill a stallion. It says that later in the chapter that this is their tradition. Um, so she's sensing something. So even though she's watching this perfectly normal, ordinary funeral pyre happening, somehow she senses that Danny is doing something other than the normal, which she's quickly proven correct. Um, is Which brings me to my next question. Speaking of Dothraki traditions, is burning dead cows, is it related to blood magic? Should we look at it in that light, or is it just a normal funerary rite that we shouldn't read too much into?
Well, we know Targaryens burn their dead, right? Like,
Hmm.
so it could be a normal funerary tradition. Um, you also have superstition linked down here. I think it's closer to superstition than blood magic.
Yeah,
If I had to guess.
yeah.
Like, if you don't burn the body with the possessions, then you're not going to make it to the afterlife. We see that in other world cultures a lot, like
Hmm.
superstitions and traditions that they continue.
Yeah.
So that's honestly what I think.
Hmm.
I don't. I think the blood magic that she's picking up on is like, again, have to do with feeling Danny's vibes. Maybe at this moment, like something is off, something is wrong.
Hmm. Yeah, she and Jorah are both feeling this. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it turns out the Dothraki are also feeling it because um, the whole speech that she then gives to them about "I free you now, you can follow
Mm-hmm.
me or you can leave," and trying to turn her Khas, which are her basically it's her bodyguard, into her which is something very different. The Blood Riders, whose lives are sworn to her in the same way that they would be sworn to um, a call, and they're not hearing it at first. It's very confusing to them. So the I think where it starts to go weird for the Dothraki is when she kind of takes this turn. It's all normal stuff until she starts saying all these weird things that
Until she hands out the presents and she's like, blood of my
yeah,
blood. Do you want to be blood buddies?
they're like,
And
no,
no, no, thank you.
we don't do that
We don't
here.
do that for ladies.
Yeah. You are a woman. You have to go to the Dash Kalin and stay with them for the rest of your life because that's what we do here. So, but she's just like in this trance. She just doesn't. She's like, okay, next. Yeah, I go. Oh, is that what you're gonna say too? Okay, Ricaro. Yeah, it's just like, fine, but you'll change your mind. She's just very convinced that they're just gonna fall in line, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess Jorah said yes. Wow. Thanks.
Jorah.
Wow.
Whatever. Cool. Good simping Jorah as usual. So we already talked about, I mean, the comet is just, as far as this goes, it's in this particular, I mean, it's very fitting. Given what happens at the end of the chapter, but it's also really kind of like a pin in the timeline so that we can link this to what's going on everywhere else in the world. So what about, let's talk more about the pyre, because the pyre is really where it's all at. Did she intend, and we kind of alluded to this too, was she intending to walk into it all along? Because she tells Jorah, no, I promise, I swear, that's not what I'm planning to do. She swears to him that's not what she's going to do. But then she's watching the pyre burn after they light it, and you get this, like, if you're in her head, it's gradually she's getting closer to the fire. First she's like stepping away from it, like, ooh, that's hot. Then she's like, no. And here's a quote: says, she was blood of the dragon and the fire was in her. She had sensed the truth of it long ago, Dany thought, as she took a step closer to the conflagration. But the brazier heat had not been enough. And that's referring to this scene back earlier in Game of Thrones when she put her eggs in the brazier and tried to see what would happen. And yeah, so she knew. So this is referring to her knowing how to hatch the eggs.
Right.
So
she needed hotter fire.
She needed hotter. She needed something hotter. And apparently nothing burns hotter than bodies. So I don't know.
And treasures and horse corpses, I guess.
Maybe. Yeah. So that's I don't know. She doesn't feel at all afraid of the fire, although she does take a couple steps back. She recognizes that it's hot. But she's initially just focused on Drogo mounting his fiery steed and riding off into the Nightlands. And then the first egg cracks. Was that the thing that flipped the switch for her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think she, even though she probably, like, maybe that was another instinctual thing, like what that sounds like, or it being so different than anything she sounded like something was going right. We got to continue this. And I think a big element of this, like, ritual that she's created is the sacrifice and the willing to sacrifice. So her committing and stepping all the way into the fire is mandatory. Otherwise the magic of it isn't going to work. Like, I think she has to be willing to die, and that death pays for life. And whatever theory or idea of the death being, either it being, like Miri or her sacrifice or Rhaego and Drogo, any combination of that birthed these dragons. And yeah, you said, we talked earlier about the eggs. Yeah, it's definitely, the first is definitely Viserion because it's the cream and gold. We're handed that. The second one, I believe, is Rhaego. And then the last one, what's the line? Shatter the...
Oh, like the breaking... It's back
breaking of the world.
As loud as the breaking of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's definitely Drogon, because that would be the stallion that mounts the world, the black horse, like what Rhaego could have been, like Drogon. Yeah. I think that's how I would say the eggs hatched, if you want my little dragon tinfoil for that. But yeah, the whole her walking into the fire and sacrificing herself, like, there's just, I really do think she intended to do it the whole time, and she was doing whatever she could to get to that point. Like, she woke up that morning and she's like, I have to do this. Don't really know why, but this is what I have to do in this moment.
So she just swears to Jorah that she's not going to do it, number one, so that he won't stop her.
So he won't stop her, yeah.
And also because she's somehow convinced that she's going to be fine. He thinks she's going to walk in there and die and go off with Drogo into the afterlife. But she knows, or she feels, or she's somehow aware or convinced that that's not what's going to happen, that she's going to go into the fire and then walk out again and be fine. Where does this rational thought come from?
She's a dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon. I mean, like, it's really leaning into the whole Targaryen aspect of it. And I mean, George describes this as a one-off miracle, so we could talk ourselves to blue. And I'm just interested in some of the like symbolism and the ritual ideas behind it. But the mental state of her right now is she knows that she's going to do something, and she's not letting anybody stop her at this point, I don't think.
Before we talk about like the dragons and their birth and how all of that maybe came about, there's some absolutely beautiful language. I think you added this part, some of this, because I reread it this afternoon and I was like, God, that's just so beautiful. Like, he writes the description of the fire. If you want to read that, you can.
Yeah, she says she sees in the fire, as she's walking closer, yellow and orange robed sorcerers, crimson fire lions, great yellow serpents, and unicorns made of pale flame. I think pale blue flame. Fish, foxes, monsters, wolves, birds, flowering trees. And that's, she also sees, as we mentioned in the summary, the great gray stallion with the blue flame mane, which is supposed to represent Drogo. And again, this is why I picked this chapter, just because of all the like magical, colorful language. I've actually painted this before. It's was in my calendar. I used to have prints of it. Like, it's just more proof that something magical is going on, right? That she's seeing all this in the flames. I'd like to know if other people saw it too.
Yes, me too, because this reminds me of the description of a lot of visions that we get in other parts of the series, kind of not the least of which is Melisandre, who is a flame reader. So, I've sort of read this and wondered if is there any symbolism here? And I just think it's not necessarily, although, things like lions and wolves and, that sort of thing stands out. But I think it's just beautiful language to describe the fire.
Yeah.
What she's seeing, and it's centered around the central vision of Drogo on his stallion.
Yeah. No. Kind of like she tapped into something. It also kind of reminded me of the language in Dany 8 of the shadow tent. Like the shadows on the walls, like kind of the similar animals, I believe, if I remember that one correctly.
Because there was a wolf. I know there was a wolf.
There was wolves and horses. Yeah.
So, for sure. So yeah, I mean, fire makes beautiful pictures, I guess, and we see that in other places as well. But dragons,
yay!
Let's dance.
Let's dance. Put on your dragon shoes and dance the blues.
Womp, womp. Okay. How? Just how? I have just one word.
Yeah.
Like,
just how?
There's no question mark. Just how? What the heck? I mean, it's tempting to just be like, fire and blood. But does other Targaryens have tried this before? See Summerhall, there was fire and there was blood because Targaryens died there. Although, to be fair, a dragon was born there. Rhaegar was born there.
Rhaegar was born there.
So I guess, maybe Targs and dragons do seem to be in dreams and reality sort of interchangeable. So I guess, or in prophecy, certainly. So yeah, I guess fire and blood, and only death can pay for life. But whose deaths? Whose deaths paid for the lives of these three dragons? Does it have to be, three lives? Is it the three recently dead people? Of whom Reiko is one, and Miri obviously is the other, and Drogo is the third. Two of which are on this, or burned at least. Their bodies are burned as part of this ritual. Is it Dany? Is Dany herself one of them? Like,
Kind of
she
feels like
offers
it.
her life.
Yeah,
Is
that
she
sacrificial element.
Hmm.
It's that theory about the three souls or whatever being needed and sacrificed. I like that too. I also like Dany's willingness to sacrifice, because if we think about in Fire and Blood and our other historical like dragon things, like when Rhaenyra lost Visenya, and like we had, I'm going to talk about the show, but we had in the show we had that intercut with Cyrax like screaming, like there's something about motherhood and sacrifice, and every so often a dragon baby being born, like, or a Targaryen baby, excuse me, being born wrong, like a dragon, kind of like those scales, horns, tail, that kind of thing. It's always made me feel like what the Targaryens, whatever it was they did, whatever blood ritual or magic or however they bonded dragons, they've always had to sacrifice in order to keep that bond. And we do things in threes a lot with Targaryens: the three heads of the dragon, three dragon eggs, three deaths to pay for three lives. She has the three visions of the fire, or the three you will love and three you will burn. Help me out here. What I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that whole thing. Like, there's a lot of
all
threes.
triads.
Yeah. As like a holy or a magical number in Targaryen stuff. That's what I've picked up on this. So I get George to be coy with his magic and not give me specific dragon facts so I can line everything up all nice in my spreadsheet. But it's like, I don't think we're ever going to get 100% a clear answer, but I do think it's definitely has something to do with the building of the pyre, the way that they laid the bodies out. Like, I don't know if Miri singing or not had anything to do with it. That kind of felt like just like a reaction from her, and maybe something culturally related to her kind of own magic. I don't know if that had anything to do with the spell though. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Sorry, I kind of faded out there at the end.
That's okay. And well, I was looking for you were talking about the threes, and it reminded me of something, and what it reminded me of is something from our own world, which is the Welsh triads.
Yeah,
which is a very, it's British mythology. It's a series of texts in which things are described in groups of threes, just like that. So George is obviously leaning on some sort of, mystical or legendary tradition from our own world when he uses those threes. As far as Miri's song, Yolkboy has pointed out that ululating is used in this chapter, and it's used in other places in describing spells or spell work.
Nice.
So he's kind of, and I share this opinion, I think, that something about Miri's song, the ululating, that she was trying to protect herself from the fire, that she was casting a spell of protection, which was meant to cover her, but it failed, and instead protected Daenerys.
Ooh, I love that. I got goosebumps. Ooh, that's good. I like that. Ooh.
So which begs the question, next time Dany thinks she's fireproof, like, if, I don't know if this would ever come up again. I mean, she's hatched her eggs, but will there ever be another time when she thinks she's going to walk into a fire and walk back out again without the benefit of that Miri Mazdor spell that she didn't really know was happening?
Oh, without her pally shield. Ooh.
You know, like what
Ugh.
happens? So, um, I don't know. And that just, I like it because it feels very George. Like, yeah, you think you understand magic, but you don't. Like, there were things going on there that you really didn't know about, that you didn't account for when you tried to replicate this another time. So,
Yeah, and I mean the comet is a giant one, right? Like that being the sign that starts it
mhm,
off, like that.
yeah.
And again, how you mention it pinpoints every chapter, like
Hmm.
everybody could see it. Huge
Hmm.
symbol of something, something, whatever you want to interpret it as, because as we have many
Hmm.
different interpretations of it.
Many, but I think that the most interesting ones, because I've also been writing about, I've been writing about Bran because we're doing a Bran series. And what is interesting to me in Clash of Kings, when the comet shows up, they first start seeing it at Winterfell. Bran goes around asking everyone what it means, and everyone has a different idea about it. You know, Septon Jail thinks it's one thing, and uh, Maester Lewin thinks it's another, and some of the small folk or the castle people have their own ideas. But the people who describe it in terms of what we're talking about, fire and blood, are Asha of the Free Folk and Old Nan of uncertain
Old Dan.
origin. Let's just Old Nan, and she knows everything. And a lot of people think she either knows a lot about the Free Folk or may have come originated there or something. She uses a lot of language similar to theirs. So whether that's just showing us the similarity between the Free Folk and the first, well, because they are first men, the first men of the North, and the Free Folk who are the first men in the far North, um, is beside the point right here, but they both call it fire and blood. That's and they're not thinking about dragons. They're just like old Nan is blind. She can't even see the comet. She says she can smell it.
Yeah,
So whatever that is going, I don't know what's going on
she's
there.
so awesome. I love her so much. Old Dan fan squad
Yes.
for
Oh
sure.
God. Oh.
No, it's you're right. All the different descriptions. That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the ones that seem to really like be drilling down are like, yeah, it's fire and blood.
Hmm.
I think Asha says fire and blood and nothing good. Um, you get, um, I don't know. It's interesting, why um, the comet has shown up, or a comet, I guess, many times throughout history. I mean, uh, Rhaegar saw one in the
Hmm.
sky uh, the night his son was born. What's different about this one is what interests me. So, I mean, it makes you wonder if the comet is the cause or if you know, it's not necessarily causal just because it's there.
Right.
That could be a false equivalence. It could be that this thing happened and the comet happened to be there. So now we're fulfilling some kind of prophecy, but it's not a direct
Let me
necessarily.
ask you this because I
Yeah.
think like what's going on in my mind is that like all of these things had to come together at the same time to
Mm,
create this one-off miracle, right? Like every
hmm.
single piece of this. The comet had to be there, Mary had to be there, Drogo had to die, we had to have a red horse sacrifice, we had to have all like the eggs had to be placed like this, the pyre had to be built like this all had to do that. But do you think Dany was intending to hatch the eggs? Because a big thing in witchcraft is intention
Hmm.
and manifesting intention, right? So do you think
Yeah.
her goal, because that's, I always thought she was like, yeah, we're going out or we're going bigger, we're going home.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
these are going to hatch. I need more fire. Because like you
Hmm.
said, the brazier,
Yeah.
what heat wasn't enough.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I
I
think her intention
Yeah,
is the key
I do.
in
I
the
do too,
engine.
and I think that's probably what's driving it because that's the smoking gun right there when she says she'd seen it before,
Yeah.
but the brazier wasn't hot enough. That
Yeah.
means she knew that she needed fire to hatch the eggs. But also there are all these other elements, and whether she becomes consciously aware that the other elements are necessary maybe Miri's continual only death can pay for life, like planted this idea in her head. Okay, well, fire and blood, this is my house words. Might as well try that one. And
Yeah.
so this sort of like intent, which is like bringing us closer and closer to this point where we have all the right elements. But why didn't this? So, what about when? So let's go back to Summerhall. Well, I guess we've already said there was a dragon born there. I mean, but they had magicians and they had eggs and they had
Mhm.
Targaryens and God, we don't know. What we don't know is what sort of ritual they did, but there was, I mean, the fire
Something.
got out of control and people died. So there was blood too. A king died. A
Mhm.
king's blood to wake a dragon.
That should
I
be
mean,
enough.
is that, you know, are we just supposed to say, okay, well, Rhaegar was born, but I mean, he would have been born anyways. Did it imbue him with something special? Like, what happened with the eggs that were at Summerhall? Why did they not hatch?
Yeah.
Um,
This makes me think of Now is the Time, Joe Magician's Pyres and Blood theory, right?
mhm,
Our buddy Joe Magician. Um, if I had to, too long didn't read his 2 hour video or however long it is. A Song of Ice and Fire, right? Dragons, prophecy, fighting the White Walkers, like their prince who was promised, Azor Ahai, everything. The Targaryens, when a time of when we were hopeless, we need dragons again. So the Targaryens for generations have been seeing Dany and the Flames hatching dragons in dreams and misunderstanding what they've been seeing drastically and tragically at times. So
hmm,
it's like all these Targaryens we've had for generations having dragon dreams are
right.
all dreaming of Dany in the
Mhm,
future doing this, and they
mhm,
think that they're the one doing it. So like that offers an explanation for Summerhall, that
mhm,
offers other explanations for erratic Targaryen behavior, especially
mhm,
those who have dragon dreams or have heard of dragon dreams.
yeah.
I just think that when I heard that, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And
Mm,
again, like with just all of the pieces of the puzzle being right, Danny's willing sacrifice, her intention, like whatever we need to make magic go, she had in that moment. And we were
mm,
missing from other circumstances. But that makes it more prophetically magical, like more universally like universe level magical to me.
mhm,
Like this is like, okay, now we need these dragons to fight the threat that's coming. We need dragon fire. Now they're
yeah,
born. Now
right.
the spell works.
This is the right time with
Yeah.
all the right ingredients in the right place, and this is it. I think there's a little clue to that too um, in the House of the Undying vision where Danny sees Rhaegar, and he seems to see her
Mm-hmm.
and say, and that causes him to go, oh, there must be one more. The dragon has 3 heads, so back
Yeah.
to threes again. But um, I find that very weird. It's like it's a two-way vision almost, or maybe more accurately, she's observing him having a vision of her. Weird, mind blowing.
Yeah.
I can't even figure it out, but I think about that one a lot. But I think that could fit into that sort of they're seeing visions of her
Yeah.
and interpreting it however they will, and it's driving their actions in a certain way, kind of like when Melisandre saw the vision of Renly at the Blackwater and killed Renly so that it wouldn't happen, thereby ensuring that Garland Tyrell would be wearing Renly's armor outside the Battle of the Blackwater. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, when
I
you
was
try
just
to
thinking
make
of
it come
Melisandre.
true, yeah,
Yeah.
you, you inevitably cause something when you try to stop it from coming true, which with the inverse, if you're trying to make it come true, you change things.
Yeah.
And it's probably better to just let things go
Yeah.
their own
To work off
pace.
of instinct, like Dany did, not to try
Which
to manipulate
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Right. Yep. She just feels it. And I think in her viewpoint throughout this chapter, certainly once you get to the part where she's preparing, you know, washing herself in Troko, and you're in her thoughts, and then she's lighting the pyre and all that. She's just focused. She's just putting one foot in front of the other, and she doesn't really have a plan. She's just kind of like going completely on feels,
Yeah,
instinct.
absolutely.
Yeah. What do we? I mean, what do we want to say about her state of mind while she's doing all that? I mean, it seems almost trance-like, but it also seems kind of
Calm.
calm.
Yeah.
Definitely, I get the feeling that she's untethered from reality.
Yeah.
In a way that could be viewed quite negatively by people that don't really, that don't understand what's going on.
Right.
As far as the magical elements, but
Um
it's interesting, very
yeah, I
interesting.
keep using instinct, kind of like almost like as of her ancestors and her blood and everything. If we want to talk about it like magically or like semi-religiously, ancestrally, magically, like that's kind of what I feel like is like driving her actions and her following through with this. It all feels very right and instinctual, and she never stops and questions herself. And she's what, 13, 14 years old at
Yeah.
this point? Yeah, like
Yeah.
and from the lips of babes or however they say it, like this is just what she knew she had to do. Her mind state, I don't think she's like sad. I don't think she's super happy. I think she's just calm and just like, this is my mission, focused on what she has to do. Like I think there are other times when she also is like this, like times when she speaks to gosh, I can't remember his name, the guy that we get the Unsullied from, like where it's just kind of like she's so self-assured like that.
Oh yeah.
It's like a moment of her just being like, no, this is what I have to do, and this is calm, just queen shit.
It just almost feels like the all the generations of Targaryen-ness.
Yeah.
You just sort of like,
It's just the blood taking over,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And she's not. She becomes so very sure of herself in moments like that, and that's what it's like here. She's so sure of herself that it's kind of eerie.
Yeah.
But then again, Danny's. I think she says it in this chapter. If I look back, I'm lost. I think it's the beginning of her.
She says it 3 times in the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Pretty close together.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, that whole thing. Like so many of our iconic lines, like we see in this, at least our iconic Targaryen lines. And I've had forgotten how many were just in this one chapter. So rereading it, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So that comes up a lot, and it becomes really almost like her mantra going forward. It's yeah. I think it's almost like a cue that she's operating on instinct. That in that moment she's just giving up her whatever rational thought and just doing what feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's like when I tell kids like to do painting, and I'm like, you got to let go, and you just kind of gotta get into the zen zone, and you have to let it flow. It's almost like just like letting actions take over from thoughts, which is a very hard point for anybody to get to. But I do find it with younger kids in that age range actually are very good at being like, once they get in the zone, they know what to do. And it's not doubting yourself, not second guessing, just following those instincts. You knew I'd find a way to tie dragons to painting.
Well, no, that is actually great, because I think it's interesting to tie sort of the practice of magic to creativity.
Oh yeah.
Because when you're creating something, there's a magical element there, because you're creating something from nothing. You're creating something from a bunch of whatever, neurons firing in your brain. I mean, it's nothing that has corporeal,
essence,
and
right?
matter. So you take things. So it's very much like this, where there's a bunch of ingredients, and then there's some kind of magical element that pulls it all together. So I love that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Speaking of magic, this is apparently when magic returns to the world. There are so many references to magic returning to the world after this. I mean, we could. Yes, let's, like, how many are there? Like, when they get to
Oh
Karth,
gosh, so many.
you get. Well, it seems almost like, so some of those people who are in Karth, because those people will come looking for her in the Red Waste. They become instantly aware that something has changed and that they're going to go find her. So it's not, this isn't a fluke that she just hatched dragons, and it's not limited to her. It's not like just casting a spell to, I don't know, create light, or something. It's something much bigger than her. It exceeds her little group of people. It affects the entire world. That is, that's wild. Like,
Yeah.
they feel it up at, they feel it in Westeros. The guild,
Essos.
the alchemists,
Yeah.
are like, we can't stop producing wildfire all of a sudden. It's crazy. This stuff is just replicating and replicating, and you've got it all over Essos. The fire magicians with the ladders come to mind.
This brings back the Red Priest magic, even though we don't see that until later. The glass candles start burning again, right?
Yep, exactly.
And since you're in your Bran era right now, which I've been listening to, it's wonderful. Thank you for it. It's been great.
Thank you.
Ambient music while I'm cleaning and doing things. But question: when does Bran start having the dreams? Is it before or after the dragons? Because I was trying to think of that, and the comment being like the placeholder. I was like, is it before? Because I think it is before.
It is, because he has that dream in Game of Thrones. He has that dream where he's, looks
falling and flying.
He follows everybody, and then he falls into the heart of winter, and that's when he wakes up. So that's beforehand. And obviously, like the White Walkers woke up, that's a whole other kind of magic that, people think maybe Jon Snow's birth woke them up. Something has stirred them into action recently.
Yes. So I think of that. I like to think of it as Westeros has different systems of magic. While it might all be drawing from the core, we've got our earth magic with the Children of the Forest. We've got our White Walkers magic, which would be ice. And then we have our Red God Targaryen fire and blood magic. Right. So blood could be a fourth. It could also just be fire and blood or one. We could also consider like maybe some wind magic or some water magic if we really wanted to, like, but just like, I think it all flows from the same source, but it comes out in different ways.
Yeah.
So magic returning to the world, I still think like some of that deep core earth magic, like especially with Blood Raven, could kind of be there, and it might be echoes of what it could be. So I think Bran would have had a lot more dreams by now if he was fully tapped in, but kind of being tapped in. That kind of gives him a lens into it, if that makes sense.
Right. But I think you're right that it's a different kind of magic. So maybe the good examples of it that we have of magic returning to the world is the alchemists and the fire magician and Karth. So it's really fire magic.
Yeah.
So that's what comes back with the dragons. For whatever reason, the ice magic, that's a whole different live stream, but maybe they woke up, maybe because Jon was born. They started.
It does seem like let me find this line here. Because something that made me think about the different system of magic earlier is just when they were laying out the pyre. I was mentioning this earlier, but they laid the first layer of the pyre east to west over the horse carcass, which was ritualistically killed, and the third level of the pyre north to south, ice to fire. George seems to separate ice and fire from everything else. So I don't know if those are like apocalypse world ending like magics versus just natural magic. But like, even if you think about magic in our world, or at least how it's interpreted in witchcraft, we've got things like kitchen magic, we have like green herbal gardening magic, we have different things that are
Right.
like different types of the same idea.
Yeah.
So I just think it's really interesting that he always separates ice and fire. What do you feel about that? Like, in
Yeah.
any time it's mentioned.
Yeah. I think it's clear that they're distinct and complementary, and I think that maybe what it is, the Song of Ice and Fire is probably about them being in balance. Which seems natural. I mean, if you want everything to be right with the world, everything should be probably in balance with each other. But they're very comparable, complementary, I guess. They both have zombies. But
Mm-hmm.
ice magic seems to have a lot more zombies. Good for them so far. But George has said that basically the people like Lady Stoneheart and Beric are basically fire zombies.
Yeah, fire whites.
They're the same as the which is interesting because it's interesting to me that he equates that, because they obviously seem to have a lot more self-direction, those two characters, than any of the ice whites we see. Um, Although you do get those two that come to Castle Black in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Jafer and Othor.
Mm-hmm.
What was that self-directed? I don't know. I don't think anybody really thinks that. I think they were sent by somebody, but so it's going to be a little bit different because their level of sort of self-determination for the fire ones seems quite a bit
Yeah.
more. But maybe we'll see like a different level of that with John. Should we ever get to see John?
Don't lose hope. We're gonna make it.
Yes.
My phone has been blowing up with articles saying he has 1,200 out of his planned 1,500 pages, and I'm like, but then I got an article that popped up today that said, no, there are no wins announcements coming, and I'm like, oh, but gotta keep the faith, fam.
Just
gotta keep the faith.
I do. I do believe in it because I'm a positive person, and I feel like it's inevitable. It feels like at this point a dream. But
let's manifest our intentions of reading the Winds of Winter, guys.
Exactly.
Manifest it. They can't stop you. Hatch your dragons.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We can make it happen if we all think positive thoughts.
If we believe in the heart of the cards, Lady Gwen.
I think that's some like Peter Pan or something. But also, so since we're kind of talking meta stuff now, let us talk about that iconic last line of the chapter. For the first time in hundreds of years, the night came alive with the music of dragons. And I, being very often very concrete, and I love the timeline, but I also know that George doesn't write to a timeline. But there are some things where he does write to a timeline, like when he's talking about history, and that last dragon, the stunted green dragon that you hear about in first in Hedge Knight, died during the reign of Aegon III, which was 131 to 157. So that part of my brain, whenever I read this, I'm like, oh, what a great line. And I'm like, it's not been hundreds of years, George. It's only been like 140 years.
What's the flawed narrator thing? That's what Danny was thinking. Yeah.
But this isn't her. This is the omniscient narrator.
Oh, this is the omniscient
This is
narrator.
the line where it's omniscient. So I'm like, what? Obviously, it was the first book, and he hadn't worked out all of that history yet. But so there's always a little part of my brain that goes back to that, and it's like, all right, can we, for the first time in 150 years, the night came alive with the music of dragons.
Well, that's not as poetic, Lady Gwen.
It is definitely not, and I am going to grant George his poetic license. But I thought it would be fun to talk about that. And also, what's happened with House Targaryen since the dragons died. I mean, that one last poor sad dragon dying during the reign of, Aegon Dragonbane, Aegon the Unlucky, Aegon the Third, Aegon the desperately sad little boy that watched his mom get eaten by a dragon. Um, what has
Spoilers,
happened
all
to
things.
this family is, you know, the metaphorical magic has gone for them. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Civil War followed by Civil War followed by Civil War. So I mean, I guess in terms of Westeros, their grip on the Iron Throne, on the realm, which was aided by dragons, really only lasted about 130 years and about like 5 generations, I think. But after that, once the dragons die, it's just this steady decline, and it just keeps, getting worse, and there's fewer and fewer Targaryens. And obviously part of that is because, in spite of our boy Egg's best intentions, um his children decided to bring back the brother sister marriages, which just drove it down to, you know only, having a pair of Targaryens left by the end of the 3rd century. Well, really, maybe 3, maybe 4, I guess. Depends
Maybe.
how you look at things.
Everyone's a secret Targaryen these days.
Maybe 5, 6, I don't know. Who
Find them all. You get a prize.
Gotta find them all. It is funny because I mean, I know Secret Targaryens is kind of a joke in the fandom, but the story is literally built upon a secret Targaryen. So
Yep. One of the main characters, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting. I think about that last dragon a lot, and like especially like the lines about the skulls in the throne room and Valerians being so big coming from Valeria. Had to think how to say that real good. But then we go all the way down to this little green dragon, which I imagine like your grandma's ancient crusty white dog.
Yeah.
Like, or a little shaky chihuahua. That's what I'm getting for that poor little green dragon.
Yeah.
And I think me and Egg were talking about this recently on our channel, and I think she laid eggs. Like, she was big enough to lay eggs. So we were kind of like, how big does it have to be? How big is a dragon egg?
Right.
Going deep into the weeds of dragon lore. But it's almost like, like obviously the point is when the dragons dwindled, so did their line. So they're very connected. Yeah. And again, I think that goes back to whatever deal they made with however they made it to bond dragons. Like, their fate is tied to them.
Right.
So the last Targaryen, she's got to do something. Well, the last one that has silver hair and purple eyes.
And it's interesting because, like we were talking about, where everything had to be, in line. There had to be all these specific factors. Like, Egg tried at Summerhall, but he didn't have all the right elements in place, although he got sort of a result, but not really the one he was looking for. But when you think about it, relating to the incest, they had sort of started to move away from that. Number one, because after the Dance of the Dragons, there weren't enough Targaryens.
Yeah.
They had to move away from it. So as the family kind of branched out and started bringing in other non-magical blood, it led to, this continual decline of the family and the inability to, refresh their stock of dragons, if you will. And then it was this unintentional, because this is absolutely not what Egg wanted for his children, but the unintentional resuming the brother-sister marriages for 3 generations after Egg 5, which led us to this point. So it's like, and George said they did that to keep the bloodline pure so that they could continue to control their dragons. So it's like that part of it had to happen in order for Dany to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, she's got the most concentrated blood that we know of, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a tinfoil theory or whatever, but I do think there's something to the women in the story, like being the ones that actually can hatch the dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whether
Mm-hmm.
that be by just being a mother and being the feminine, the life giver,
Right.
or that being like something tied to the DNA and the magical bond or something. But I do notice like a lot in the language with the bonds between the women and their dragons seem to be stronger, and of course the dragon mothers that we know that give birth, like Cyrax and Dreamfire, we know a lot of clutches from them, but I think
Mm-hmm.
those are primarily our only known dragon mamas.
Yeah.
Of course, others are called she dragon if they lay eggs.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I do think there's something to keeping that bloodline pure that really enforces that connection. But also then when we have I don't know, House of the Dragon season 2, and thinking about it in lieu of like just how many years have gone by since Fire and Blood came out, and thinking and talking about it again and again, I'm like, I don't know if just a drop of dragon blood is enough to bond a dragon, if that was maybe something that was kind of like instilled as a control point,
Mm-hmm.
like just for Targaryens to keep it in the family.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like just like controlling our kids through these marriages where they don't get to go lead their own lives and they have to marry each other. So then we can control them. So then we can keep our system in order. I don't know how much of it goes, but I've been thinking about a lot of that recently, lately over the last couple of years, like how much dragon blood actually matters when it comes to bonding a dragon.
Well, on the flip side, one thing that I've noticed about the Targaryen family tree is every time you get an out, like a marriage out, and there is a female, she gets sucked back into the family.
Right.
Right. So if someone marries a Valerian and there's a Valerian female who has Targaryen blood, she gets married back into the family because they need to keep that blood. Because, I think the flip side of what you're saying is, what if all it takes is a drop of dragon blood and that one figures it out, and now you've got Royces,
Yeah,
who all of a sudden figured out that they can control dragons. What
Yeah.
like they sheep stealer in the Vale, and then some random Royce with Targaryen blood is like,
let's go.
so it's all part of that mythology that they have to, but it doesn't mean that it's not real,
Right.
because it may be that it's actually very, very real and
Right.
dangerous to them to let that dragon blood escape from their control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd pointed that out to me before about taking the women back, like when we'd had a discussion once, and I
as
thought that
far
was
as
so
we
interesting.
know,
Yeah.
because obviously there's big holes in the Targaryen family tree, but I think it's interesting that the ones that were shown, you got to remember, obviously, that this is the author's writing this stuff, and he's choosing to tell us these certain things, and I find it significant that where he shows us the family tree and he shows us those females being born out into another branch or another family altogether, them getting absorbed back in the next generation.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to have babies in any other family.
Yeah, because if that drop is all it takes, yeah, that's
trouble.
always what I've thought. Like it was like Control 2 and like something with the women, and yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So last thing is, let's talk about the eggs.
Okay.
So we got 3 eggs. Where did the eggs come from? Are they the eggs that are mentioned in Fire and Blood? Are they 3 other eggs? I'm kind of a couple of minds about the Fire and Blood eggs, the Alyssa Farman eggs. Just simply because, like, how did they get from the Sea Lord to the, to Dany?
It was the Sea Lord of Bravos who had them, right? And
Alyssa Farman
Alyssa.
sold
So they'd
3
have
eggs.
to, they'd have to have somehow made it into Illyrio's possession, and that's what the line in Fire and Blood tells us. Like maybe they ended up with a certain cheesemonger or something where we're supposed to tie those connections,
right?
But then also, we have Ryan Condal with the word of God being spoken into his ear, and Rhaenyra from Dreamfire puts those eggs, or sorry, not Dreamfire, Jesus, Cyrax puts those eggs, and we're supposed to believe that's Dany's eggs. But he's also mentioned like the show verse versus the book verse. So I like to think they're Alyssa Farman's like stolen Dreamfire eggs. I like to think that. And I also think that would make sense as to why all of what we've kind of like seen as the model for Dreamfire looks like Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion. Like, I think that would be a nice little nod at the book universe canon.
Yeah, right.
However, I can't think of anywhere else they would have come from, like, other than was there a point, I think Jaehaerys was giving away eggs, or am I tripping?
No, he didn't give away eggs, but I'm trying to think of who. I think there are points at which we know that the cradle egg tradition persisted all the way down to Viserys. Don't know that Dany was given one because her mother died and all she had was her crazy little 7-year-old brother and they were fleeing. So she obviously didn't get an egg. It didn't, or if she did, she didn't take it with her to Bravos, at least not that we know. Like, what if, hear me out, because you had Rhaegar, Viserys, and Dany. What if they had 3 cradle eggs and they actually took them to Bravos with them? I mean, would these kids even know? Like, Viserys,
they wouldn't know the tradition on how to warm them or
Dany
anything.
wouldn't know. She would never know that she even had an egg. Like, it is possible that the 3 eggs originated from somewhere else. That would, if there was somewhere else, that would be my bet, because there were 3 of them, and we know that Rhaegar had one, and we know that Viserys had one. And
I like that.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's the only other possibility. But yeah, I don't know. That one would make sense for the for them to somehow end up with Illyrio. But Illyrio and Varys were thieves, so why couldn't they have stolen 3 eggs from the Sea Lord or the former Sea Lord? Because let's remember that the Sea Lord is an elected office, so once that Sea Lord that Alyssa Farman sold her eggs to died, and like, where do his treasures go? Do they go to the next Sea Lord? Do they go to his children? Do they get moved to a secure or a not secure location? Like, could Varys and Illyrio have somehow come across them because now they're actually not in the possession of the current Sea Lord?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the idea of it. I've never thought about it being Rhaegar and Viserys and her own cradle eggs. That's really, really cool.
And just stolen on their behalf, or
like maybe guarded until they were ready for them. Until Dany got married, here you go. Here's these eggs, because I don't think anybody thinks they're gonna hatch at this point.
No.
So like, here's these treasures that your family. Here's a piece of your history, basically. Here you go. Because if the secret to hatching the eggs is lost, then an egg suddenly becomes way less valuable. And we have the one that Euron allegedly pays for his fee to kill Balon, right?
Yeah.
And who knows if that was real or not, or if he was just talking out his slimy little butt.
Tripping or whatever, yeah.
It was actually a Fabergé egg, and he was just so high on Shade of the Evening, he thought it was a dragon egg.
He's like, look at this sparkly thing.
Here you go. I did good. Now give me more shade.
I don't have any words for... Yeah, shade is pretty much all I have for Euron. So, not of the evening, morning, afternoon. I don't care. Yeah, like, but where did he find that egg? Did he really like go to Valyria?
Yeah, I don't. I like to think that he did all the cool things that he says he did, but I know he's definitely exaggerating for some of it, if not all of it. Like, and then we have the whole drugs are included, so who knows how much of what he's seeing is actually what he's seeing. We talked about that in our Winds of Winter coverage a lot.
Yeah, it's very hard to say, very hard to pin him down to anything rational.
Yes, for sure.
So yeah. Have we left anything out? Is there any final eggs or dragons or blood magic things that we have not talked about?
Uh, I think I got everything out that I wanted to rant to you about with all the magic that I wanted to talk about.
Finally thought to look in the chat, and of course, our egg, pointed out that Aegon the Unworthy gave
That's what I
dragon
was
eggs
thinking of.
out. It wasn't Jaehaerys.
He hates Jaehaerys,
Jaehaerys,
so I was just assuming it was Jaehaerys.
yeah, no.
He also hates Aegon the Four.
It was Aegon the Fourth.
Yeah, so what happened to those eggs?
Exactly. I mean, we know one of them ended up with the Butterwells, and I guess
Butterwell?
Bloodraven must have repossessed that one. He certainly didn't let that get back to the Blackfires. And it's clear, I think Egg as in Aegon the Fifth, makes it clear that only the legitimate princelings are given eggs.
Yes.
So none of the Blackfires had eggs of their own, even though they're Targaryen and they've been legitimized. And one of them, Daemon, is fully Targaryen on both sides, but he is not allowed to have an egg because there's a danger there. And the danger is exactly what happened because he got the sword and whatever else. Imagine if he had also been given a dragon egg.
If you had to pick a dragon for Daemon to have, any of the dragons that existed, which one do you think he would have?
Oh boy. Let's see. Kind of want to say, I don't love Daemon Targaryen, but I love the original Daemon Targaryen, and I wanted to say Caraxes for that reason.
Caraxes is also what I thought. A, because of the namesake, B, because he's like red, and that would work.
Dragon. Yes,
and
exactly.
I'm married to the biggest
I know you
Blackfire fan.
I'm sorry, Pat. I'm so sorry.
We love you, Pat. He's watching downstairs.
Sorry. Wait till we do our Blackfire episode. We're gonna do that.
Yeah, he has so many thoughts. He's a big Blackfire stan, and
I know.
Our marriage is definitely a Targaryen and a Blackfire coming together. We're the Forbidden Union.
Oh, that's good though. You're
right.
You represent the future and peace has been, peace through marriage alliance. That's awesome.
Yes, there we go. We made peace in the Midwestern lands for sure.
That's awesome. So, chat, did we miss anything? I'm gonna look.
I did want to say I think you have a couple new viewers in here. Somebody named DP. What's up, friend?
Oh, hello.
I've never seen Sletchy Lesh. I think I said that right. Hi, Christina. Hi, Egg. Hi, Joe Magician. Hi, Chatty Lumpkin. That's a fun name. Hi, Mother Royan.
Oh, hey, Mother Royan.
Yeah. Mackenzie, good to see you.
Yep.
Thanks for coming out, guys.
I like your commentary, Slimy. Well, you were agreeing with us, but that's thank you, chat, for chatting. Sorry, I'm really bad at reading the chat. Well, because
You're
reading our document. So apologies if I missed anything good, but thank you all for being there. And thank you for being here.
Of course.
Thank you for joining us. And, to our whole audience, like I said before, whether you're here now or listening later, we appreciate you. And we very much appreciate you, Sanri, for sharing your Saturday afternoon or evening here with us. Why do we not talk about what is going on with you? I'm going to put up some Sanri specific information here on our screen. I've got your link tree there. All this stuff is also going to be in the show notes. But yeah, take it away. Tell us what you're up to these days.
Well, I host a podcast called, it's not really a podcast, it's more like a live show, a variety live show called Sanry Scribbles with Egg6 in the chat. And we draw, live draw and shoot the, I don't think I can cuss on here because this isn't Sanry Scribbles, but we talk a lot of smack about a lot of things. We're currently finishing up our Winds of Winter series. George R. R. Martin has actually called me and told me that he is not releasing the book until we're done. So really, you have me to blame.
Perfect.
I will take all your hatred away from him, yell at me until we are done. We're planning on making a calendar with all of the images from the book, from our streams. We're also doing our art raffle streams on Wednesdays. We stream every Wednesday and every Sunday for the most part, give or take emergencies or holidays or whatnot. But that's twitch.tv/Sanrixian. And we are at the point where you can just Google Sanrixian and you're going to get returns. If you can't remember any of these links, just do that. That feels really cool to say.
It does.
But come check us out. We have a fun time. Patrons are automatically entered to win free art at this point. With my career and everything, the only way that you get commissions out of me is through that Patreon art raffle. So if you want free Sanry art, do
here.
that.
Yeah, down here, patreon.com/Sanrixian. Yeah, and highly recommend it. I love you guys, and
we've had you on many times.
You do have a lot of fun.
Yes, we do have a lot of goofy fun. It is definitely not for children, but big shout out to Egg and Emily. Also, I think they were your last two guests.
Hey, Fred. Yes.
Yep. So we have a lot of fun, and we'd love to have anybody who wants to come hang out with us and talk about dragons to insane details in the weeds.
Yes.
For sure.
Love it. I love it.
What do you guys got going on, Lady Gwen?
Well, we have got up next, we're doing an episode all about the Dothraki, which is fitting considering how much we talked about Dothraki today and Dothraki traditions and all that. So that's going to be more sort of a historical episode, which will be followed by our conclusion of our Bran coverage, the third episode, which is Bran's arc in A Storm of Swords and A Dance with Dragons. That's over the next couple of months. Further out, we've finally gonna do my Year of the Fall Spring episode, which I've been wanting to write for a long time. So really excited about that. Look for that by the end of the year. And as far as this series goes, I'll be back in September with another Lady Gwyn and Friends live stream with another friend who I believe, unless anything has changed, is going to be Scad from Dabo's Fingers. Who I love. I love talking to him. He's very well informed and he's a lot of fun. And I have no idea what chapter he might bring. But that would be sometime in September. So
something tells me it might have the Broken Man speech in it.
Maybe.
Something tells me.
Maybe, yeah. The one thing about Lady Gwyn and Friends and the favorite chapter is that it's often hard for people to pick their favorite chapter. So that's what I have discovered. So whatever he brings, I'm sure it'll be interesting. And we will continue doing this. For sure, check us out on patreon.com/Radio Westeros, where you can join our other patrons in supporting our work and gain, access to patron exclusive episodes. You can join us in our Discord where we have all kinds of fun talking about mostly things that aren't A Song of Ice and Fire these days.
It's a great Discord.
We talk a lot about The Last Kingdom and about books and TV, movies and sports and music, and we play games and stuff like that. So come on and join us. If you are here on YouTube, do not forget to like and subscribe because that helps a lot. If you're unable to support us financially, liking and subscribing on YouTube is tremendously helpful. And social media is a hot mess these days. So you can mostly find us on Blue Sky now. We're at radiowesteros.com, or we're around on Instagram. I don't post a lot other than letting people know when streams and episodes are available. But that's where you can find us, and of course on the Discord. And
The Discord is important.
again, if you cannot support us and you really have a hankering to join the Discord, shoot me a message either on Blue Sky or send me an email through our website or however you get in touch with me. And we do like to invite any fans of the podcast into the Discord because it just makes it more fun. So, yeah. So, thank you again to everyone, Sanri, all of you. And we will see y'all again soon with another live stream in September.
Bye.
Bye for now.